Hey folks, welcome back. Frequently in my videos I mention a company called Brake Crafters, brakecrafters.com, and this is not a paid endorsement or a paid sponsorship. I just want to go over why I like their kit so much and throw a kind word out there to them because they've helped me out a lot on some special stuff. You give them a call and say, I just need for example, a piston and it's kind of a weird size, or a kit that's kind of unusual size or unusual application. Gentleman named Steve up there will get with you and do some research and usually be able to provide it. A lot of times they have it in stock. So big shout out to them. They've helped me out a lot, and so I want to try to help them out and go over why I like their kit so much. This particular kit is for the front caliper on the Valkyrie. Now both calipers on each side are the same, and it just so happens that this is the same kit that the rear caliper takes. So essentially I have three caliper kits and one master cylinder kit in the box that came from them, because I need one for the rear master cylinder. And I'll go over some dislikes I have, some cons if you will, with certain parts of their packaging and so forth here in a little bit, but let's just go over what I want to go over regarding how easy it is to use their products. So we'll take a look at what's inside typically one of these kits. Now you can get it two different ways. You can get it just the rubber parts, the seals, and you can get it with the pistons. And when you have the piston kit, you also have a choice of getting stainless in many cases or non-stainless. All right, these are I believe they're the non-stainless ones. It depends on the cost and the application as to what I buy. Sometimes the stainless kits or piston kits are only a couple bucks more. These were, I would consider, somewhat significantly more, so I just went with the standard, which is fine in this application. As long as you flush your brake fluid out at least annually, you're not going to have a problem with any piston. The problem is when you don't do maintenance. And I belittle this point all the time, so I'm not going to beat that dead horse. So yeah, I really like their kits and the way they're packaged and what comes with them. So we'll go over that right now. You have your pistons in this particular kit. You have your seals up here. You have the rubber bits where your mounting arm goes, and where of course this caliper can float back and forth as the pads wear and find its true center. And this is part of that as well. Comes with a new bleeder, comes with the crush washers, and a bleeder cap. Now depending on the one you get, the kit that is, the bleeders will fit screw-wise, thread-wise, but sometimes they're a different wrench size. The Z1R was that way, where it's a 10 mil for stock and an 8 mil for these. I liked the 10 mil better, so I actually ordered some OEM fittings for that one. But in this case, we are going to use these. This guy is Red Rouge, in case you have some problems with your lipstick or something. You put a little bit of this on before you go on camera, and you can also spread it on your cheeks, and it makes you look a little bit more healthy. If you believe that, then I got a bridge to sell to you. This is brake grease or silicone grease that we're going to use as we install the seals mainly. When I install pistons, I like to use brake fluid, which I have set in a little shot glass here, sort of, over to the side. All right, and so this is what I do. Your mileage may vary, but I have a perfectly cleaned caliper right here, and we're going to go ahead and throw it together real quick with the Brake Crafters kit. And as I go, I'll again highlight the things I like and perhaps a few things I don't. In more modern or later model bikes, you will find these seals, which the manufacturer, in particular Honda, they refer to them as packing. Okay. Will come in two pieces. You'll have a main, which goes into the larger slot inside there that's machined in there, and the outer one is kind of a dust seal. All right, so that's the thinner one, and that's got a little bit of a kind of a ridge in there, and it's designed to capture any dirt and prevent it to go into the cylinder itself from the outside. Okay, the cylinder and piston. So I only mention that because some of the older ones, like for example the Z1R, only has one of these on the inside and a big dust cap that goes around a little lip on the inside of the caliper itself, which is a real pain in the butt to get on sometimes. But in this case, it's your real typical standard modern day one. Yeah, brand new bikes will be very similar to this, if not exact. Yeah, so all you have to do is slip these guys in, and this. That is, unless you drop it, then you got to pick it up and clean it. All right, so what we're going to do first is we're going to take some of their brake grease And remember, this is already clean. This is cleaned thoroughly. You want to make sure that there's much crap out of those grooves as possible. You know, where these O-rings go, these packing goes. One thing I need to interject here is when you're cleaning calipers, always refer to your service manual, because there are certain calipers, like for example on a Concours 14, the service manual says to only use alcohol. I think they mean like alcohol or possibly brake clean to clean them. Don't use any other like solvents, not solvents, but like, you know, simple green, or put them in an ultrasonic, that sort of thing. It specifically says use alcohol, and I think that's because the material is phenolic. So like as far as the pistons go, and I don't know if the bores are coated in there or something. I don't know, but just keep in mind now on these old school aluminum ones, you know, the game's on. You know, you can pretty much throw them in the washing machine if you wanted to. Well, probably not, but you know, as far as your specific application, definitely look at the service manual. Make sure they don't have any restrictions on any chemicals that you can't use rather, and what you can use on the calipers you're cleaning. Take a little brake grease and we go over the whole thing like we're putting some schmoo on a little, you know, ring or a little donut type thing, and then we're just going to give it a, you know, light coat is all we need. And you know, it's a little red, so feels better. I feel much more refreshed now that I've put some rouge on. So then we just stick these guys in, and it's kind of fiddly. Alan Milliard just did a video on doing a brake conversion over on his 500cc four-cylinder machine he built, two-stroke, so it's a Widowmaker but four-cylinder, and he just did the brakes on it. He talks about doing this exact same thing. You can go check out his channel and look at that. Without the grease, these things will want to hang up going in. They don't like to sit in there without some grease because they stick. So you put a little grease around them as I showed, and then you just get them in and make sure that they're flat. If they're turned, you got to take them back out and do it again or what have you. Going in, they don't like to sit in there without some grease because they stick. So you put a little grease around them as I showed, and then you just get them in and make sure that they're flat. If they're turned, you got to take them back out and do it again or what have you. You can see it's a little bit up, not quite in yet, so we'll give it a move around. Try to get it to flip. Alright, so I just work it, and then we're good. Alright, it was just hung up on one, it was kind of twisted sideways, so you got to make sure that they're nice and flat in there. When you stick your finger in these, you'll feel that the rubber packing, this inner packing, isn't actually parallel with the bore. The inside edge sticks up higher than the outer edge, and that's because the grooves are machined that way. They're machined with a slight angle, and so when the packing sits in, it's higher on the back side or the pressure side of where the fluid's coming in. So under that pressure, it would want to essentially have a much higher friction or a much higher contact point on the inside or the fluid side where it contacts the piston, and therefore it seals itself off. So the more pressure on there, assuming that everything else is good, that'll seal off even more because of this little higher edge on the inside. And if you haven't noticed that before, the next time you do brakes, just do this, and you can definitely feel that. Okay, so that's why that's the way it is. I went ahead and got those outer dust seals in, so now we're ready to install the pistons. Now, people do this different way. Different people do it different ways. Okay. I've done it a number of different ways, and the way that I like the best is to use brake fluid. Some people will rub some of this brake grease over, but there's already some grease in here, of course, from putting the seals in, so we're just going to leave it as is. I have found that if you use exclusively brake grease, any brake grease, all right, it'll tend to stick these things after it sits in for a while. They don't want to move too smoothly, at least. Slowly, yeah. So I kind of like to do the brake fluid instead of just the silicone grease, and this grease is compatible for this purpose, so you don't have to worry about that. You're saying, well, you're putting grease in there, it's going to screw up your material and also your fluid. That's not the case. So what you want to do when you set these guys in is you start to kind of line them up and then wiggle them around a little bit. You see when I'm wiggling around and it finds the center, and we already went through the first one, so now we're going through the inner one, and then apply some even pressure, and they should go in just like that. And again, I got a little brake fluid on there, and there was a little existing grease from the seal install. So I'll go ahead and do the other one. Now that that's done, we can put the arm on and get the pads in and so forth. Don't forget the shims that keep the pads, either number one, they help them keep in place, and also number two, from squealing. They're kind of anti-vibration shims. These may look dirty, but they're actually pretty clean. Sometimes it's very difficult to get all the staining off from this thing being in situ for so many years. So I ran these through the ultrasonic a few times, and they're fine for the application that we're, or at least what we're doing right now. They're clean enough. I mean, if you wanted to polish them up, go right ahead, but let's not get too anal here. I mean, when do I ever do that? So this pin here is the pin that goes inside. This hole right here, which is part of your pins for the section that goes in here, which again, this side and the pin that I have in my hand allow this thing to float in and out, or actually allow this to float in and out, because this is the part that's bolted to the fork. And so I want to make sure all this stuff is clean. This one is real good over here, but I haven't yet dressed this one up on the wire wheel, which I'll go ahead and do. You want to make sure these things are real clean, and do yourself a favor when you put these in. You definitely want to use some Never Sees on here. These things can get really, really stuck. There's also a cap that goes over them, which I just have to dig out of the parts here, I guess. So there's a cap that closes that off to keep, crap out of it, and I still have to clean this up too. Same thing, put a little Never Sees on it. This in particular, they love to just seize up, and you got to heat them. There's a slotted head, so you can use maybe an impact. And these guys are a 5 mil hex key or Allen key, whatever you want to call it. So let me go ahead and do that off camera. We'll get all this stuff cleaned up, and then we'll go ahead and put this part back together. Okay, so the next part we're going to do is the rubber parts. This longer guy goes in here. Obviously it goes this way because it has to have the opening toward the arm that it mounts on, because that pin's going to go in there. And then this guy will mount on the arm itself, and that seals that off. So we're going to go ahead and sneak this one through. This can be a little bit of a challenge, but on some other bikes they're a real pain in the ass. Like on the Magna, oh my god, these things are so hard to get through. So you just want to lather them up with a little bit of grease, put a little bit around the opening, and you can generally get these to push through pretty easily as long as you got some grease on them. And then once you get that done, if you want to use a blunt tool to drive it home, like I like to use, sometimes coffee stirrers work pretty well, but in this case you're just going to pop in. So we got that in, wipe off the excess, and we're going to put these guys in here in a minute. I mentioned before not to forget them. I'm not going to do that, but we just want to get the rubber parts in right now. And the same deal with this. You put the rubber parts in their slots or in their resting place first, and then you get the pins in, because otherwise they're not going to go. Part of the space, I shouldn't say space, but let me explain it this way. Let me take that one back out. If you look at this pin here, and you go to put it inside the hole where it lives, you will notice that it doesn't fit very closely, and it's not really supposed to. The rubber seal makes up that difference and provides dampening for it, so for vibration and so forth. So it's calculated in when they engineer it and machine these parts, that when you put this in and then the pin goes in, it's going to be a snug fit and it won't move around so much. All right, so you guys got to keep that in mind. So you most definitely need the rubber parts. Now we're going to put the anti-vibration clips, or whatever the hell they're called. This one goes in here, and the other one will go on the arm itself over to stage right. These are only going to go in one way, so if you try to put it in this way, because it clips in by those two little guys on the top there, right there, you can see 1 and 2 right there. It won't fit this way, it just doesn't, so it's got to go this way, and that puts some pressure down the pads when they're in place to keep them from vibrating out. And you'll notice that the end of a pad sits up here, actually both pads. All right, so that one goes there. If you want to put a little grease there, it's fine. I usually do not. On this clip here that goes on the arm, this is only going to go one way as well. It goes with the opening up, if you will. It can't go the other way around, because you remember you got these little clips holding in place, and you can't put it in wrong, because then the pad won't go through this opening here. That opening has to be open for the pads. So we're going to just snap that in place like that, and then we're good with that. So we definitely don't want to forget those. Okay, So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take like I said, I like to use those little coffee stirrers. Go inside the rubber parts like that. You want to kind of pack that up with a decent amount of brake grease. Now, if you don't have brake grease, you can use regular silicone grease, like pretty much the same thing. I wouldn't necessarily recommend using like automotive wheel bearing grease because I don't know, I just wouldn't. But you know, these kits from Brake Crafters, if you choose to buy from them, comes with grease in every kit. Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a master cylinder kit or a slave cylinder kit or a caliper kit, it comes with grease. So you're always going to have grease. And there's technically enough to do one caliper or one item, I should say. In this case is one caliper, but there's usually always a little left over. You don't have to go crazy on it. And I like these little containers with the screw caps if you want to reuse them for, you know, something else. Like for example, super small little parts or screws. That's a real handy way to do it. You clean them out real good, and then you can put your little screws in or your stash or whatever you want to do, you know. And then so, no, I'm not advocating that. So now we got a good amount of grease in there. We'll put a little bit on the shaft. We'll get this one here in a minute. At this point, all we have to do is just start inserting stuff. So basically, I'm going to shove it and get it to sit in where it's supposed to sit in. Go past the rubber. On the end here, you'll notice that there is a little shoulder right there. So you just go as far as it'll go, and it'll kind of pop into that into the rubber that it mates to. Yeah, because there's only a certain amount of movement that these things are allowed to have. Not like they move across the universe or something. So in a normal operating condition with brand new pads, it may be right here. And then as the pads wear, it's only going to come out like yay far. So this thing stretching out is not going to come all the way out there. It's only going to move that much under normal circumstances. So we've got the clips back in, or the shims rather, and now we can go ahead and put pads in. Clean your hands off. You don't want to get the grease all over the pads. Customer provided these to me, and I assume they're for the front because there's two of them and they're the same part number. You can go look that up on any parts fish if you needed to verify if something like that should occur to you. Somebody provides you the parts, but I'm pretty confident they are. You know, the rear takes the same caliper, so I bet it takes the same pads too, but they're in a different package, like an aftermarket looking thing. So I sure like the OEMs, but if you choose to use like Caliper, or you want to use EBC, or you want to use something else, that's perfectly fine. All right, that's where this pin comes in. This pin is going to lock in. This part goes up into that little recessed area that we put that little clip in, up in there. You see it? So that's going to slip in there, and then the pin's going to hold it in. So now, as far as the pin goes, like I said, this is the part that's going to give you trouble in the future. If, you know, for the next guy, if that next guy is you. So I put some, again, I put some Never Sneeze on the threads of this thing. These will seize up. I had a DRZ 350, I'm sorry, a DR 350 Suzuki one time that pin was so seized up that I had to use a thread extractor, or a bolt extractor, and I could have sworn that the bolt extractor was going to snap, but it eventually got it out with some heating and some time and some work, you know, working at it, and I finally got it out, and that was a number of years ago. So I actually, the extractor set the owner provided at that time. He said, "Here, try these. I can't get it out," and so I actually bought a set of Irwins. So now we're going to go ahead and put the inside pad in. If you take these out and you're putting back in used pads, you know, you clean them up with brake clean or whatever you're going to use, try to mark these and put them in the same place when you put them back in. It's not critical, but it's just really good practice to do that. Then we're going to put this one in and make sure it locks up into its little slot and wants to go home. And then this one, remember, this is springy. So it's springing upwards. So when we go to put the pin in, we're going to push this downwards to make that line up. And that's the pressure that's on there to keep the pads from vibrating around. So in regards to this pin, we have our Never Sneeze. If you don't have it, just put some brake grease on the end. And I got some brake grease, probably mixed with a little Never Sneeze. Yeah, on the pin itself, just a little bit. You don't want this thing like dripping. See, the problem with these pins is, unless you replace them, the anodized coating that keeps them from rusting. That just wears off over the years and corrodes. So you put a little grease on it if you're going to reuse those, and it'll help you keep it from rusting too quick at least. This can get a little fiddly, so we're going to push it down. It goes in from this side, and you can see we're going to line up the holes by pushing against that springy shim, whatever you want to call it. And that one goes in, and I'm out of the slot up in here. It came out. They're, like I said, they're a little fiddly, but once you get them in, they'll stay there because of that pressure. Line that one up. Now we're going to get ready to screw it in, go home with it. It wants to go home, and it'll go in the rest of the way. If you got to force anything, you don't have it right together. You don't have it together correctly. I don't know if there's a torque spec on this, so I just used the German torque spec of Gudentight. And then we'll take this. I'll put a little Never Sneeze on the cap. These were pretty tight getting them apart. I haven't taken the left side off. This is the right side caliper. I have not taken the left side off yet. So sometimes they're so tight that you just got to heat the crap out of them. And that is definitely tight enough. So now that we have this, these pads in, you can see one kind of popped out and went a little cattywampus on us. We can just kind of pop it back in place by just doing this. And now that's in. You see, I'll show you, see if I can show you some detail on this, the way this is designed. You can see that there's a little tab in there, right down in there, that the pad, the edge of the body of the pad sits against, so it can't go in anymore. And so there are features built into those pieces of metal that are the shims or the clips that just help keep the pads aligned, not just keep them from squealing, anti-vibration. So we're just about done with this particular caliper. All we got to do now is put the bleeder in, and I recommend you clean these bleeder holes out really well. That's the bleeder right there. And if it's any rust or corrosion down the bottom, it's unlikely to seal all the way. And then we're going to go over really quick what I really like and what I kind of don't like about these Brake Crafters kits. Now some guys will put some sort of a thread sealer on these. I have never seen the need to do that, so I'm just not going to. I'm not going to do it. And then we put our cap down below threads, and this can go on there like that when we're done. And so right now this caliper, aside from kind of wiping off the grease prints and stuff on the outside of it so it doesn't feel all sticky and track dirt, is done and ready for install. Alright, so what do I really like and dislike about the Brake Crafters products? Well, the like part is pretty much everything. The fact that they give you everything in a kit like this. Let me get the other one and we'll go over it because I got two more. What the hell? Like I said, you can get them two different ways. You can get with and without the pistons. So if you don't need the piston, you just get all the stuff you see up here. These things are just packaged great. They got, they got stuff inside like the little peanuts, whatever they're called, to keep everything from banging against itself. Even one between the pistons so they don't damage themselves. You got your grease, you got all the rest of your parts. A lot of times this packing is actually going to be OEM. They sort, I don't know if it is on all of them, but they source OEM stuff and then put it in their own packaging. So this is, you can always ask them that, but this stuff is really, really high quality kits. And it's not terribly expensive either. I think, I don't remember what, I'll put it in text in this particular clip, right down kind of here, what these cost, these particular kits cost individually. The ones I'm using here, I don't really remember, but I'll put it in there. It wasn't that much. So, it's very cost effective. You got everything in the kits, and you can't really go wrong with it. And their customer service is second to none. And when you order these things, if you order this thing at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, like at 4:05, you're going to get a shipping notice via email. I mean, and then when you get the parts, you get an email saying congratulations, or hey, great news, the Brake Crafter stuff has been delivered. So I mean, they have really, really good system going on. The one thing I don't like, and it's kind of annoying, is that they don't put the application on the package. So if you do order like let's say 3 of one and 1 or 2 of another, you're going to have to write down the part number application unless you know which one it is. And in this case it's pretty easy because I've got 3 of these and all 3 calipers take the same kit, so it's pretty easy. But that's not always the case. If you order a bunch of stuff, especially if you're working on more than one bike at the same time, you just want to kind of save on shipping, this is all going to come in one box, and you're going to have to go in and use their part number system to look up the application. So if you write it down as you're ordering it, like on a slip of paper, like that this BC04 blah 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 goes to a certain application, then when the kits come in, just take a indelible marker and mark it on the kit package here, kind of like I did on this VFR one, because I have some VFR parts that I pulled out for another use. And that way you know what it is when you go to open it up, because you may not get to the job in a couple of days or a week or something. So that's the one thing I don't like. The other thing I don't like is when it's very difficult to see the part numbers on their website. Some of their part numbers, you have to click either on the item itself, not necessarily on the page that shows a list of choosable items for a particular bike. So you have to click on the item, then you can see the part number. For me, with a small business, I want to reference this part number when I put it in on a labor ticket. So I really want the part number, and so I have to go look that up. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but because I don't have this kit package inside where I'm doing my paperwork. So that's about the only thing I don't like about it. Is I really wish that they would put the application on it. But I guess since the application may be so vast, it would be very difficult for them to do that. But I don't know. That's just me. That's what I really don't like about it. But otherwise, their stuff is just great. BrakeCrafters.com. I absolutely, positively, highly recommend them. I've ordered a bunch of stuff from them, and I absolutely love working with them because, again, if you have a special needs situation, they will step up to the plate, and Steve up there will do his due diligence and research and come up with a solution for you. So again, this is not a paid sponsorship. I asked them if they would do that, and I never got a reply. But still, I want to give them a shout out because they have helped me so much on jobs, and I know they can help you too. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next video.